This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Bruschi and Robin Dreeke.
All right. Was it on your bingo card this year for Rex Heuermann to plead guilty? Well, he hasn't officially done it yet, and the judge has to accept it, so we don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, but it looks like it might be happening in the next handful of days. We've been getting flooded with a lot of your messages and questions about this case. There's so many facets to it, because what we're really talking about is 7 different murder cases, all combined into one. The life of Rex Heuermann with his family, living this double life for all those years, that's a whole conversation unto itself. The lives of these victims, each and every single one of them and their families, that's at least 7 more conversations. There's so many pieces to it. Today, we are going to break it down. We're going to answer some of your questions in the Q&A. So feel free to dump your questions there for us in YouTube, Substack, Facebook, wherever you're watching, and we'll try and get to them as we work our way through it. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. As always, my co-host, one of my best friends with us. Robin, was it on your bingo card that he was going to plea in this case?
No.
Yeah.
It was a shocking thing, and I do apologize for everyone tuning in if I glitch a little bit. I am on the road in the motorhome, moving my son from one place to another, so we're on our Starlink today. But no, Tony, this was such a shock. Like one of those happy surprises, but sad at the same time, because I was really looking forward to having him weasel in front of us, try to get out of all this, because I know the evidence they had was overwhelming. But kind of like, Kohberger's thing was at least, getting ready, it was going, and then he pled guilty. But this, I feel like the public is being denied all his horrendousness. But the most important thing is the families are guaranteed some semblance of justice. So from that standpoint, yes. But so shocked? Yeah, totally shocked.
I am, and remember, last year we had the Kohberger situation where he pled towards the 11th hour. We weren't quite to the 11th hour here with Rex, but we were getting close. Do you feel like this is taking anything away from the families, or is this the more swift path to justice? I'm trying to think of a way to frame it. What's your thoughts there?
You don't know, because you just don't know what each family wants, needs, and would feel satisfied with, because that does vary a lot. And luckily, not having ever lost someone this horrendous way, I can't even suppose what it's like. But what we do have is we have a guarantee. We have guarantee he will be put away for the rest of his life. And for that, I'm grateful. For that, I'm glad there's no appeal. There's no chance. We're not going to be hanging on our every word of the defense, on a cross-examination, trying to defraud all these other people. So I'm grateful, but I just hope, as always, that the real victims in this, the ones that are survivors left behind, do find this satisfying and have some justice in it for them, so they can move forward with whatever they want to do next.
I can, if you think of it, if he were to fight this all the way to a verdict, there is a level of re-victimization that would go on in that trial through whatever defense that they would mount, basically refuting all the evidence that exists. And that in itself, I think that would be I've never been through it, thank God. I can't imagine, so it's hard to contemplate. But to me, I think that would be the most enraging, is if the evidence, the hairs are there, his planning documents are there. His attorneys came to him, I'm sure, and said, there ain't really a way out of this, buddy. So this might make the most sense. But he could have kept going. There's nothing saying that he couldn't have kept going with this. But that, to me, I think would be the outside of the actual crime, the actual murders itself, is the injustice, the way that he could have gotten on the stand if he wanted to, or others could have gotten on the stand to back him up as witnesses or expert witnesses to try and vie for his innocence when all the evidence points elsewhere and he knows it's not true, and just to try and bamboozle people after they've already done something. That to me, I think that would be the hardest damn thing in the world. And I hope to God I am never in a situation like that where I have a loved one that is deceased and somebody like this took them out, because I would not be a good person in that courtroom. I don't think I could peacefully sit there in the gallery and not get arrested. I think especially if it was like my kid or something, it would not be a good day. I would need a lot of good support folks with me going, it's not worth it, Tony. Calm down. Because that would be hard. I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, and the women that he wound up killing too, their families, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because they'd probably tried to discredit some of the people on the prosecution side, and I hate seeing that. I don't know what they would actually do though, because again, the evidence is so overwhelming. But at the same time, I don't know the victims' names that well, and I would like to know the victims' names better so people can really focus in and zero in on that, as well as I really. God, it's a sensitive subject, because the women that he targeted, they were disenfranchised, I'll say, and they had their own issues and challenges throughout life, and it would have been really good, I think, from maybe not from a family viewpoint, but from a public standpoint of realizing, hey, we need to do better as a society to protect women from having to, I don't know what the case is here, but I know there's a lot of women that get trafficked against their will.
Yeah,
that might have been part of this as well, and he then targeted those types of women, which it's quadruple tragedy going on, because he thought he could actually take advantage of these women and hide in plain sight, and no one would ever notice. But gratefully, everyone notices when a loved one goes missing, and there's no explanation.
And I think this is one that kind of makes you think a little bit too, about life, about the people that are in your life, the choices other people make in your life, people that you love and the choices they make. And if they're bad choices, if they're not good choices, if they're choices out of desperation, if they're choices because they were taken advantage of or trafficking. We're talking about people who were S workers. And in a lot of these cases, at the time of their death, their family really wasn't a present piece of their life. Some had like a sister, some had pieces here and there, but a lot of them were not necessarily going to Easter dinner or whatever. They were a bit estranged in many of these cases. And unfortunately, it took a tragedy like this, I think, for some families, I'm sure, to kind of reckon with the disconnect of however that happened with them and their loved one. And to really, I think, see the value sometimes that we overlook sometimes as human beings when we're upset at them because for whatever reason, this or that. And you always think there's going to be another day. There's going to be another day where hopefully this changes and she makes it right or he makes it, whatever it may, where things change and we can reconcile. You don't always get that opportunity. And I think this is one of those cases where it really it drives that point home. These families didn't have a chance to have that reconciliation moment with their daughters for however they chose or whatever their relationship status was. And unfortunately, they kind of have to do that very one-sided because they're gone. For those of us who do have families and loved ones, and obviously it's not common that everybody has family members that are doing this sort of work, but it doesn't matter what they're doing. It's just, it matters that they're human beings.
And they're victimized
and to value
by a monster.
them. And to value them for who they are while they are here. And the abandonment, the walking away. There's so many caveats to this, and it's all these complicated relationships. But unfortunately, I think a lot of those families had that realization too late. So if anything, it can be somewhat of a viewable lesson from the outside. Let's go to one of the questions that we got. It says, Tony, I watched both documentaries and cannot stop thinking about his daughter. She went and visited him in jail and came out still thinking he probably did it. This is Victoria. She says in the doc, I think he probably did it. While Asa on the other side is like, he's my hero. How do you sit across from someone and feel that? What do you think that daughter is going through right now? She already was kind of almost there he probably did it. Now we got essentially confirmation that it is him. How do you think the family is processing that?
devastating, absolutely devastating, heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. You know, and we saw this in the Duggar family as well, not serial killer side, but where you felt completely betrayed by someone who, for your entire life, you thought was there to protect you, to keep you safe, especially the father figures. They play a huge role in a young girl's life. They really do. And to have the protector, the provider of your life, who you thought you knew inside and out, to all of a sudden be this horrendous monster that kills women, and not just conjecture or what someone's accusing him of, admittingly doing that. It totally rips away your own self-identity, how you identify your family, your father, and this entire thing, and you're left with a huge gaping wound and hole of now what? And everything you thought you knew has completely been a lie, a huge, massive deception. And then who knows what she'll go through. But then I know there's a lot of self-blame in here. Should I have noticed something? Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't notice this. Could I have done something? So it's going to be a whole gamut of needed, and I know they already needed counseling before this, even more so now, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it seems Victoria was more dealing with reality on reality's terms than Asa. Asa, the mom, everyone was looking at her at the beginning. How did you not know this was going on? You went on vacation, and every time you went on vacation by yourself or with your kids, he didn't go, and then he was doing these horrible things. I mean, you got this lair in the basement, and we saw the way she kind of, minimized it and explained it away in the documentary of like, I know what this room was once, and I wasn't allowed in here, but she thinks she knows her husband, but her prism of who her husband is to her was not who he was to everybody else. And I think that's an interesting thing, because I think we see this on a much more micro level in many relationships where people have their secrets that they don't really atone to or talk about with their family. And it's not always I'm out killing sex workers. Sometimes it's like I'm addicted to gambling or whatever whatever it may be. That insert vice here of some sort. Usually it's something not like that, but something that they're going to keep hidden. Then to kind of square that up for Asa, who already, despite the damning evidence against her husband, he had the documents in his basement, basically the kill sheet. The hairs are there. It's all there. And she was still holding on to this hope that he wasn't this, because she was someone who came from a darker place, a place of insecurity. And he swooped in. We look at it differently. I mean, she looks at it as knight in shining armor. Mm-hmm. Everyone else probably looks at it as a predator finding prey, because he found in her someone who could be his partner, but also wouldn't ask too many questions. I think a lot of people, relate to that to a certain extent. Doesn't mean everybody's out there being a killer, but people do look at this and go, what about me? We got a question here. Honestly, it says this case has messed with my head in a way I didn't expect. My husband travels for work. He's gone a lot. I know that's nothing, but I've caught myself thinking differently since I started following this case. Is that crazy? Or do you think a lot of people feel that way? That's from Lisa on Substack.
Yeah, people get paranoid sometimes when you follow things like this. But here's a fail-safe for everyone at every moment of every day. Just be transparent and seek transparency with those people you care about in your life. Be open, honest with your communication. Be transparent and be vulnerable. And as long as that's reciprocated back to you and at the same tempo, there's no wobbles in the force, there's no tempo shifts with anyone, and everyone's continuing to be that kind of person with you, then you don't have anything to worry about. Because remember, healthy relationships don't do this. But not all unhealthy relationships do. Because happy people just don't kill people. So if you have a good, happy relationship, it won't happen.
Is there? Let me throw this out there, because let's caveat this a little bit. Is there ever a world where a partner has a hidey space like this, where I think it was like under the stairs,
right?
And it was his place where I mean, and there's like, I think we all have a secret place, and for a lot of us, it's our phone. You know, where like, although for a lot of people, it's not. Where it's like, you know, I could care less, honestly. My partner don't have each other's passwords, but if she ever wanted to, go ahead, take a look. I could care less. But you know, for some people, that's very, very protected. I'm talking more than just a phone. I'm talking like a room, a space, a computer, things and places where you are not allowed to go to in that house, and you know you can't. Is that, I mean, that to me would be a major red flag no matter what's going on. Or,
Huge.
you know, or some, but the thing is, some get conditioned in relationships to think, well, it's okay, we can have our own spaces and our own places. Like one person's using it to play, you know, Candy Crush. The other one is, you know, plotting how to kill, you know, S workers.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
Do that happen all the time? Yes. Every single case I investigated inside the FBI, everyone had a secret place.
Yeah.
Whether it's this small or this large room, everyone had something. And what's secret? Secret place is something from your perception that you're ashamed of, that you're afraid to share because you feel you're going to be judged in some way for that behavior you have, a vice you have, or something like that. I will say, though, the vast majority of human beings, when you share and are vulnerable, will get an immense amount of grace from the people who actually do care about you in your life. And so my counter to everything is, again, that open, honest communication. For example, just my wife and I, every time I go someplace, granted, I'm retired from the FBI. Most of the time I'm just traveling around, moving kids around, setting up weddings with my daughter and all this stuff. But I go to the gym every day and I do all these things. I'm out and about. I do backpacking. Every time my wife has any sort of question, my always response is, come with me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And so when you're always willing to have someone come along, always willing to engage, same thing, like you said, open cell phones, all these things, as long as you're comfortable doing it, sharing everything with full transparency, and they're willing to do that with you, good to go. What happens in the case like Heuermann, he groomed her into secrecy, accepting his secret place. And so it became a normal part of their relationship from a very, very young married couple age. And so when you groom them into this, and then children are born, children is always accepted as what is, kind of like the Duggars. This is just the way it is. And so they're groomed into thinking it's acceptable for a grown man to have a secret room that is off limits to everyone, don't even know what's in there. And if you even whisper about it, things get angry, people get, I mean, when you have negative emotions and negative behaviors going behind secret things, that is not just a red flag. That is something serious shit going on. You got to really discuss and deal with, or get away from.
Yeah, I mean, and the normalization of it is interesting, and you don't know it's abnormal if you've never really experienced that before, or if you grew up around it. Especially if you grew up around that type of behavior, that is normal to you. You know, if dad did this, if mom did this, if uncles, if somebody did it, like, oh, well, because we tend to take things that happen in our childhood, and if it happened in our childhood and we survived it, it's like, oh, that's okay. That's over there. That's, you know, and you don't really see the potential for darkness there either.
And that potential, and to just riff on that a little bit, someone said gun safe. Yeah, definitely always lock up gun safes and things like that in the house for safety. You know, because here's a telltale sign to kind of riff with this. If someone is willing to have a secret place and keep it off limits, and that's the transparent secret place. In other words, you're aware that there's a secret place and you just know not to go in there. The likelihood of there being something else now that you're not aware of that's a secret is pretty damn high, because when people get comfortable keeping secrets from someone else in their life, that's a warning flag. If they're comfortable keeping secrets, there's a lot of secrets probably that they're being kept.
And after a certain point in time, I think of it kind of this way: like if it's the first time you're hearing of it, and either you're going to accept that boundary, quote unquote, or you're not. You kind of got to speak up immediately, because if you don't, then the secret level just keeps rising, and there's more things behind that veil, behind that secret. And even if you do suspect something, and I don't know if Asa suspected anything or not, I can't speak to that. I would be genuinely shocked if she didn't. Not necessarily to this level, but just suspected that there was something amiss. Maybe Rex has a gambling problem. Maybe Rex has something over here. I'm going to guess she wouldn't have suspected it went to this level. But you don't necessarily want to pull that lever, I think, at a certain point either, because you also realize that pulling that lever, you don't know what's behind door number 3. Mm-hmm. And it could completely blow up your own world, too, if you pull it. And right now, everything's working just swimmingly. We go on vacations separately, and it's okay. He's working. We got a home. To her, the norm, the status quo was just A-okay. And why ruffle those feathers? Because everything was going a hell of a lot better than what she had seen in her life, where she had come from, too. So just not wanting to pull that lever, even if you do suspect something, it feels like that would go up over time, too, just because of the sheer fear of what that could potentially mean by calling it out.
You hit it right there, Tony. Fear. It's the greatest motivator.
Yeah.
And you're right. So, again, let's reverse it. Let's put us in Ana's shoes. So you have all these red flags, or horrendous big red flags, right? But how's it impact her? Mm-hmm. He's still providing, making her feel safe. Safety, security, and prosperity, those are what we're seeking and craving. So even you've got red flags over here, which this is really incongruent behavior with what I would hope to have in a relationship. But again, if she's not doing a compare and contrast with anyone and anything, who knows? But if it's not impacting her in a negative way, why would she change it?
Yeah.
I mean, unless she's suspecting something is going on that's not healthy, but she can rationalize it away because it's not affecting me. He's a good provider. He's my knight in shining armor. See how she created that narrative of knight in shining armor, and that rode the arc through the entire thing. And all he had to do, the imagery that popped in my head, as you know, it always does with these things, is he's like Dracula, and she's like Renfield. Yeah. Like he's out there sucking the life out of people, and there she is as the willing enabler, not asking too many questions, kind of cowering in the background, making sure that everything happens according to plan, but not really asking too many questions and trying not to be culpable even though I'm connected. That's it.
Well, and you also got to consider, too, she's raising 2 kids. One has some disabilities, the other doesn't, but they were young, so that's 2 other worlds you got to blow up if you were to pull that lever. And then you have that guilt on top of it. You got fear, and then you have guilt, too, because if you hadn't pulled that lever, none of this would have happened. And she never pulled the lever. Somebody else figured this out before she ever had to, so it was kind of forced upon her. But I think a lot of people live in that space, and it's a scary, scary place to be. And as time has gone on, I have a lot more empathy for her now that we've kind of seen this from a different, from a more balanced perspective. Because going in, it's like, come on, let's take a closer. But I think, if there was anything there, I think we would know it by now.
Yeah, they would have charged her, but you get conditioned to learn how to turn a blind eye when you don't think it's like this. Something unhealthy is going on, but to confront it, you are totally then negating all the choices you made in life. You're negating your own self-identity. Again, laws of human nature. It goes completely against what we think is in our best interest. Because remember, all of us, very predictable. We are going to act in what we as the individual thinks is our best interest in terms of our safety, security, and prosperity. He was doing all those things from her context, without a loving critic on the outside saying it, but from her context, that's what he was doing. Irrespective of the fact that she had, because she hasn't been charged, I agree, she had no idea that he's actually killing people and keeping trophies and doing other horrendous things. She just thought it was some gun safe he had down there, some boys club thing, whatever.
Yeah, and you play it down because you don't think that it can't be that bad. Surprise!
He's never
horrible situation, unexpected development. We'll be doing a 5-part series on this soon, really breaking down all of the story, and helping folks better understand this whole case. And here's an interesting part to it too. Before we move on to our next thing, he's essentially, if he does in fact plead to 7 of these murders, the 7 that he's charged with, there's a lot of unsolved ones still. Yeah. I would not be surprised if the thought process in confessing to these or admitting guilt on these somehow is connected to possibly other ones, and maybe lowering the odds of being charged with those. I mean, it all depends how the system works as to if that were to come down or not.
And I'm also curious, Son of Sam law, I guess, is in effect in this case, so he cannot profit from this. I'm correct? Because it is New York.
I do not know the answer to that, but
it's a good thing to look at, because I'm really, here's the other thing I'm really curious about, because so BTK did a similar thing where he pled, and then he's trickled out all these details over the years to keep the attention on himself. He was a lot more charismatic than Rex Heuermann, and so I'm really curious. Part of the reason why is I researched this about what makes someone do this in this situation, where he's being accused of being a serial killer. The only ones that are really fitting right now is overwhelming evidence. But again, if you're narcissistic and it's all about me, you want that kind of grandiosity. But some of the driving factors is family. So if the driving factor in this is because of his family's pressure and he's actually had enough empathy to succumb to it, I wonder what he's thinking he can actually do behind bars for the rest of their lives to help them maybe profit from it. Again, I'm really curious what he was thinking and what is in his mind about what he can do to provide for his family. Even it was like, all right, my life is ruined. Maybe I can still do something for them. I'm curious whether he has that kind of empathy to do.
I think that's a big question. What inspired him to go down this road of guilty? What was that? That's something to think about, and we can discuss in the coming days on that. Your thoughts in the comment section on Substack and YouTube. We'd love for you to weigh in and give us your thoughts there. Let's move over to another case that we continue to cover. It's been nearly 2 months, no arrest, no proof of life. Savannah Guthrie sitting across from Heuermann, crying, saying she wakes up in the dark every single night, imagining her mother's terror. While all of that is happening, the department running this investigation just had a deputy arrested and fired, not connected to this case, but on a kidnapping charge of his own. 22-year-old Pima County Sheriff's employee allegedly holding a handcuffed woman in his patrol car, pressuring her for S. Not related to Nancy, but it's the same department, the same building, the same chain of command under a sheriff. His own deputies want to vote out unanimously, but they can't. And the question nobody can stop sitting with is this: how much confidence are we supposed to have in any of this? And what happens to Nancy if the answer is none? The optics are not good for the department to see one of their own getting arrested and charged like this, kidnapping. Now, it has nothing to do with the Nancy Guthrie case. They did look at it initially, and the profile of this officer who is facing charges does not necessarily fit the physical makeup of what we understand of being porch guy. But I mean, when I saw it this weekend, I was like, but as of now, it doesn't appear. I guess. Should anybody have any confidence in the Pima County Sheriff's Department at this point?
They are taking a lot of shots, aren't they?
When I
saw this, and we were talking about this with Jennifer Coffendever on Friday too. We want to give a lot of because as law enforcement professionals for my entire career, we've been there. We've seen bosses like this. We've seen situations like this. You get a lot of credit towards the worker bees at the ground level executing, but this thing, when you have an arrest internally for a charge of kidnapping, you're like, all right, this isn't just a problem at the top. We might have systemic leakage from the top that's causing a culture of crazy. And that's, again, whether it is or isn't in reality doesn't really matter as much as, well, it does matter, but it equally matters even more in public perception, because where do leads and tips come from? The public. Mm-hmm. Where does faith in our organizations, institutions come from? The public. And every time you are self-inflicting a wound on yourself by having a culture and a climate of crazy, like this organization, like Pima County Sheriff's Department, it erodes trust. And then you're looking at, I keep trying to find out, is the investigative team solid? Is the literally as me, that's all I keep worrying about and thinking about. How solid and consistent is that investigative team? And now when you start seeing shots coming in and you start seeing where people are removed here, you're like, well, was this person key or not key? I mean, It's too much mental gyrations going on, which is a lot of chaos. So, because here's what's happening internally. If you are so worried about a witch hunt internally, or about I got to worry about or not communicate with, or I got to maneuver around this person and this person, all that bandwidth, and then remember, us as a human being, if you got 100 kilowatts of bandwidth, say, right, and now we got to use 20% of it on this individual alone, and then maybe 5% over here, and 10% over here, and 15% with this person, and all this other, you're left down to like 5 or 10% of your bandwidth for what actually matters. Investigating who took Nancy Guthrie and trying to find her and trying to find a culprit. Meanwhile, if all your bandwidth is sucked up because of crazy around you, that's where the problem lies.
I was thinking about this weekend a bit. Now, obviously, had we walked into this and we had a competent sheriff and we had a competent sheriff's department and everything was going swimmingly, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But we don't, and we are. The fact that there is this much crazy seemingly going on around Nanos and the department, does that ultimately, and I'm talking long-term here, help or hurt the investigation? Now, again, competency early on would have been lovely. But if we're talking long-term and actually finding the guy, let's say this wasn't Nancy Guthrie. Let's say this was someone, one of the many that go missing in the Sonora Desert every year, which is hundreds of people, hundreds of bodies that they find there. I saw Coffin Daffer posted something about that earlier today, the sheer number that are bodies that are found in this desert. If there wasn't this noise around this investigation, around Nanos, I'm thinking, she would just be another person that would, it's another one that's missing. The fact that there is all this noise and the fact that there's all these eyeballs that are exposing all the BS, all the corruption, all the incompetency, all the, insider trading, if you will, to the public, and they're all seeing this. Is that ultimately a good thing? Because ultimately it will result in change. Now, it's not going to result in Nancy Guthrie coming back alive or quickly, but I do wonder if I'm trying to find the silver lining in this shit show of does the exposure and the fact that it was someone that had notoriety, is that a positive, because it will hopefully eventually lead to maybe many more of these cases being solved, looked into better? I mean, prime example, the case we had just talked about, Rex Heuermann. For 10 years, you had an incompetent sheriff there that was like dabbling in the S-worker world himself. So he didn't want anybody looking over. And I'm not saying that, Nanos is out there, knocking off, elderly people. But in terms of just attitude and how things are being handled, seemingly we have some issues here. An exposure came for the other guy, and things changed. And now, look, Heuermann's been arrested, and we got, 7 charges, and he's pleading guilty. I'm wondering if there will be an eventual, here's the long-term positive to this experience.
I think so. So I was I checked into one of the campgrounds I stayed at over the weekend, and the guy actually recognized us from, being on Hidden Killers, and he's like, "Oh, I love true crime." And he's asking about the Nancy Guthrie case in particular, and he goes, and we're actually having exactly the same conversation, and I brought up exactly the same thing. I said, in the long run, when you actually use someone like this because they have celebrity notoriety to bring attention towards a problem area, it can be a good thing. I mean, Gabby Petito is a great example. He was actually out in the desert 4 miles from where they were at and camping, right? And he goes, do you know how many bodies they found in the desert when they're searching for her? That they had no idea about, all these unsubs and all these missing women that went missing in that area. He said when he was in his area he was in, I think he said they found 10 or 12 that were otherwise like dead cold cases. And so because it brought the attention to again. The challenge here is, this is where it's taken a sad shift. Every single case, again, I was on a show the other day where it's easy to see every single national case like this the leadership at the top gets panged by us. I mean, we pile on because we're looking for perfection. We're looking for people to do a better job. We're looking for better communication. There's always a level. Now, here's what the big difference is, though. Nanos falls right in the realm of normal, unfortunately, for these behaviors. But here's what's not normal. In all these other instances, though, you don't have their entire police department signing petitions to remove them. You don't have 40 years of lying on resumes. You don't. So his performance level is little below average from what we typically see in these type of high-level situations and high cases like this. But where he's falling bottom is what everyone behind the scenes is saying about him, the kind of officer he is, the kind of leader he is, and his whole department is in chaos. In all these other cases, the department seemed pretty solid. They actually were able to execute, and then things got solved because of those solid departments. But because of Nanos' leadership in here, he's got a crap show on his hands, and it's playing out, unfortunately, in a negative way, I think.
I got a question about the tips that have been coming in. Over 1,500 tips came in after the reward was upped, I should say, to the $1 million. Obviously, not a cold case, but a flood of information. It's not nothing. The question is, what does that mean when the leads are there, but the answers aren't? Pam asked that on X.
Yeah, well, when the leads are there, but the answers aren't, means you got a lot of noise coming in. But you always got to sift through noise because you have no idea where it can go. And, Coffin Dever and I talk about it all the time. Mm-hmm. Everything gets run down. And more the better, because especially when you start, I wouldn't say coming to the end, but as your meaty leads start ebbing away and you're left with, hey, I saw a guy driving down my road at 3 o'clock in the morning 50 miles away. Those are the kind that you got to start saying, oh, maybe that's something. Maybe this is something. Maybe this is something. The hard part then is not just following up on the lead, but then seeing if it relates to all the other data points we have and see if there's a connection there. Because that's what we're doing when we're following leads. We have the core base of knowledge that we know from the crime scene, from the digital analysis and everything we did. And then what we're doing is, if what we know in here is left us at a dead end, well, then all these other leads that are coming in, we're seeing, is there a connection? Is there a connection? Is there a connection? So right now, more leads are better because we keep trying to see, is there a connection? Is there a connection? But as all these other ones dry up, we're still left with this, and it doesn't really be seen to bring us anywhere yet.
Did you get a chance to watch Savannah's interview with Hoda?
Yes. Yep.
I've never thoughts. What was your reaction after seeing it?
I've really liked watching her throughout everything. I think her messaging has been more thoughtful than anyone else's, than Nanos, for sure. This one was the hugely empathetic draw, and because I know people are criticizing the interviewee, whatnot, but I you can connect with her because she's being very genuine and organic with how she's portraying everything that's been going on. It's very heartfelt. I think every single statement that she has made and the family's made has been very, very strategic, but humanistic, empathy driven. I mean, so it's very thoughtful with a purpose, but not manipulative, because it's very real and to who she is. And so I think that's been very, very spot on every single time. I mean, seriously, think about this. She hasn't had a negative response necessarily to anything that she's ever said. Nanos can't say a word without everyone pounding on him because everything coming out of his mouth is stupid.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I thought it was heartbreaking. I was really surprised, honestly, to see the criticism of the interview. I saw some of it over the weekend. I'm like, what?
Were they criticizing her or Hoda? I thought they were criticizing
everything. I've
Hoda.
seen every version of criticism, and it all. I think it all kind of depends on where your mindset is going into watching it, because there's still so many people that are on this bandwagon of that the family had something to do with it. Why? And I think they're walking into this going
negative confirmation bias.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Like, why didn't Hoda really pound her? Like, because it wasn't that type of interview. Like, this was a friend to a friend, and you can argue they're friends, they're not friends. I don't really care. They've been colleagues for more than a decade. There's a level of they're there for each other at the worst moments of life. And is the Today Show, they'd be remiss in not making, points of this. Like, nobody can win in this because everybody wants to pound everybody down. It's like, well, Today Show's, cashing in on it. And you'd be criticizing the shit out of the Today Show if they weren't covering it as well.
Yes.
It's like the more awareness, the better. And I can guarantee Savannah would appreciate coverage on this to help figure out what the hell's going on. So I've seen every criticism of it. Why wouldn't they pound her? Like, this is not that interview. She's not
she gave us more tips too. We learned a lot more about.
She told us more than we
learned more
knew.
about that than in the last 2 months.
Yeah. So I was surprised by that, but just I think the most heartbreaking thing is. And I cannot imagine, because there's nothing anyone is going to be able to say to Savannah other than maybe a lot of intensive therapy with a very good therapist, where she's not going to blame herself. Because you can clearly see Savannah is blaming herself.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because she exists, because she chose this career path, because she's a person in the public eye, because she did some fun segments with her mom, which is fine to do. We all do it. I've had my mom on every show I've ever done. And the last thing on my mind is ever that something horrible. And I hope it's like you can't not live your life. You cannot not do those normal things that you would do when you're in that sort of a position. And you can't live your life in a fear state of all of that, but you're gonna run all that stuff through your mind after everything is, well, maybe if you decided to work at Wendy's for your whole life, this never would have happened, but that's not life, and I cannot imagine in any planet that Nancy Guthrie would have ever, thought or said, or her siblings would have ever have thought or said, you're in the public spotlight. That puts us at some sort of risk. I really wish you wouldn't be there. No one's ever said that. The biggest, the biggest critic, the biggest thing that's going on is the demons that are attacking Savannah in her mind right now.
And all of them too. And because remember, she was at, Nancy was at her daughter's house and her son-in-law's house, playing cards, doing their normal every Saturday night thing. And because I know there was a comment someone came up with last, on one of the other shows talking about this. Yeah, I looked it up. That was a Saturday night ritual that they had. Yeah. And so do you really think that they don't have, everyone involved in this family's got massive survivor's guilt. Massive.
Everyone's going to have the shoulda, coulda, woulda, maybe this, if I did this differently. And the thing is, at the end of the day, no. None of it really.
It's the guy that did it. It's always that choice. You can always go back in all these cases and you can think you can save the world. But no, if someone is determined to do it towards you, the likelihood they're going to do it is pretty damn high. So don't blame yourself.
And that's the hardest. Blaming. Yeah. Exactly, and that's the hard. Yeah, and that's the other thing with the whole damn thing is, right from the get go, this family had everybody looking at them, and that just compounds on top of everything.
Well, and rightfully, but that's why I love what we do, Tony, because it's. Yeah, that's exactly where you look at first. Every single case, you always start in the closed circle because that's where all the averages come in. That's typically where it is, and then you just expand out. But the first thing I did on this case was everyone's like, "Oh, son-in-law." I looked at it this zero behavior arc that fits the pattern. Zero, absolutely zero. Now, granted, a lot of this stuff makes no sense in this case whatsoever, but that made the biggest no sense.
The problem is, we're in this culture where people dig in without even having dug very deep, I think, and that's interesting. And maybe that's a state of our world today where, people used to dig in after they've had a couple reps and they've dug in a little bit, and they got a good hole going. Now it's like, I put the garden shovel in and I'm going to die on the garden shovel. It's like, what are you talking? Like, you didn't even scratch the surface here. Dig a little bit deeper. You're going to find out you're wrong. There's nothing here.
Think critically and be curious. Think critically, and oh my God, be willing to change your mind. That's the biggest thing. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I did this on Friday because again, Jennifer Coffendever was kind of doing a little cheer there because I said I moved from 60-40 kind of down to 50-50 of who was targeted or what was targeted at homes. Why? I got more data. As you get more data and details in, as intelligent human beings, we shift our minds, we shift our perspectives. Because if you are so here's the danger of all these things. If you start out emotionally attached to an outcome that you want to happen, that you wish would happen, or that you're seeking to have happen, you're now going to only take in data that supports that outcome that you're seeking. If you're just curious about, I wonder what happened, then you're able to kind of maneuver, take it all in, assess it, run it through thought experiments, you run it through the law of averages, you run it through probabilities, you run it through all these different things, and you keep taking more data in. And then you interrogate that data. It's like, all right, that doesn't make sense. Let me say, or if I have a certain way of believing this, I'm going to try like hard to disprove what I think. So this is what we do in this methodology of trying to understand what happened is you take it in, you assess it, you become flexible to all of it, and then you see if the data drives the outcome that you thought might happen or not. And then you roll. But yeah.
It's a lot easier to stay in the shallow end of the thinking pool because it doesn't require as much work. You know,
it's fun though.
You got to swim. You got. I mean, you're a swimmer. You know, you gotta paddle. You got to do some work there if you're going to go deeper in the pool. But so many folks, they don't want to put the work in, so they stay in the shallow end of the thinking pool. And that's the biggest thing with any case. Get out of the shallow end of the thinking pool. You start there. That's where you enter the pool. But keep going out, and you're going to find a lot more. I saw somebody said it's the shallow thinking that becomes the norm. That's kind of that's where I just got the
because it's easy, you know. But I'll tell you, it's so more satisfying. So here's what we do. I mean, so Tony and I'll break that fourth wall right now, right? All weekend long, like in between shows and stuff, like. We keep Tony does way more than this than he should. He needs a life, right? But you know,
this is my life.
every time nothing comes up, my mind is thinking about this stuff all the time. And all of a sudden, I have this idea. It's like, oh my god, what about this, right? And I come up with one of these ideas that are kind of that we haven't heard before or talked about before. I'll then do deep dives. I'll interrogate that information. Then I get excited back and forth with Tony because we are each other's loving critics. So if that makes sense, not make sense, and that's how we flesh things out. You have an idea. Let's see if that idea actually makes sense with what we see, what the research says, and all these other past things. And I'm going to bounce it off a loving critic. And then if it's ready to present as a theory or as a hypothesis, not theory, as a hypothesis to get more people to weigh in on. I mean, literally, we are working the scientific method in a very unscientific area.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's heartbreaking. I mean, unfortunately, there's really not a lot new to report on any of this. Savannah certainly brought up some interesting pieces about the door and such. Let's talk on that real quick before we move to the Duggars. Any other thoughts on that? That we learned that the back patio door was open. Now we know, because you add that with the other data we have of the guy on camera, porch guy. We don't know if he opened the door. It looked like that was his next step, and then the camera footage stops. What's your thoughts on this back patio door being opened? I mean, I guess one thought process would be, did the camera stop recording and he didn't get it open and he walked to the back of the house after that? You know, or with other people are jumping to, maybe there was more than one person involved. Maybe there was somebody in the back. I mean, I don't know.
Didn't really add a lot. It added a little more common sense of what I was expecting, because we had talked about this a lot, that there's other easier ways to get inside of this house rather than that front door. So it just made me even more curious about what he was even doing at the front door if they found out a way to go around the back. And one or two people, I'm still in the world of a maybe on a lot of this. The only thing that swayed me a little bit was the first impression of her brother, the fighter pilot, that said it was definitely an abduction. Only because first impressions that some people have will add a little bit more data. In other words, it made me more curious about what did he see, what made him say that. But otherwise, back doors being propped open, as I said, or even just left open. I was expecting that because there was no forced entry, and how'd they get in? And the other ways were much easier. So, yeah, it's about what I expected. But again, 41 minutes. That's the one that I still can't get over, is that time frame.
And I think a big thing that people, they're conflating a lot of things from Savannah's interview and putting it all in the same category or lane, if you will. There's facts, there's data, and there's opinion. And Savannah expressed a variation of all of it. A fact would be the door was open in the back. Okay, that's a fact. That's okay. This is the data. The door was open. An opinion would be she believes that 2 of the ransom notes were legit. We don't know the answer. That's her opinion.
Right.
She's more than entitled to it than anyone else on this planet. It doesn't make it a fact.
Right.
And what I think a lot of people are doing is they're saying everything she said's a fact. No, it's not.
And the ransom notes to me still, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Until I see them, I haven't.
It was too easy for me to replicate something with a lot of detail based on older women in homes with Apple Watches and footage, pictures from other streaming sources. I mean, there's a lot of things that could have been faked for detail. And as well as if the intent, now granted, if you're going to go down the taken for intent of ransom, it made no sense at all. So it doesn't fit that pattern. Now, if you're going to do, as I know Coffin Deffer's on the retribution aspect of it. Yes. So if it was for retribution, I think that's a more plausible theory than for ransom, because the ransom thing still doesn't make any sense with what the actions we saw. But okay, if we're going to do retribution, that means those letters were bunk anyway. I still think the letters are just nothing but spear phishing. I really think they just took advantage of a situation someone knew about.
Yeah, I tend
Till I see more data. I'm still flexible. Till I see more data.
It's data. It's data that she said it. So that goes to opinion and data. Okay, then we go from there and figure out, but we can't cross into the world of that being a fact yet. And I'm just saying to the audience out there, be careful on what you're conflating as fact versus data versus opinion, because they're all different things. They all play roles in this, but they play different roles. And if you start putting the wrong ingredient in the wrong slot, you might mess up the recipe.
And especially since Savannah put out, hey, we just want her back. So if you actually had the body, alive or dead, and you wanted money, you'd figure out a way. I did it. I used my AI. I figured out, how do I get in touch with Savannah to figure out how to get money? It gave me 5 different ways.
You're going to be investigated now.
Probably. All my crazy searches on my AI for after.
No kidding.
Show, right? It's actually kind of neat. My mind blocks me from doing certain things because I actually had to try to come up with a ransom note for Savannah, for Nancy. It wouldn't let me. But I could come up with one, but I was able to do one for my own wife.
Oh, that's good. We can't do it to strangers, but your own wife. Here you go.
So I had to plug my wife into it.
God. Oh, the joys of AI. All right, your thoughts.
All I can.
your thoughts in the comments section on Substack and YouTube. Love for you to weigh in. We do read them, and your opinion matters. So please do weigh in there. One more case we're going to cover here today: the Duggars counting the charges. We put a new podcast out today, too, by the way. If you want to just follow the Duggar saga, the Duggars counting the charges, that's the graphic. You'll find it wherever you get podcasts. The Duggars name was built on a very specific promise that a family rooted in faith, structure, and absolute moral authority was worth putting on television and holding up as a model. For years, it worked. Then the things started happening behind the scenes, and that image started to change. Children who were victims, parents who knew, a system designed to keep all of it quiet. Now another Duggar is facing criminal charges. His wife has been arrested, and the family's response from some quarters is that this is persecution. The one question nobody seems to answer, the one thing at the center of all of this, is whether anyone in that family ever actually chose the children first. That's a question I want to pose to you guys out there in the comments section. And you guys, please give us your questions as we work through this on Substack, YouTube, or wherever you're watching us. Robin Dreeke, retired FBI Special Agency for the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, is with us. Josh is in federal prison. Joseph is facing charges. Jim Bob knew what Josh did and handled it himself. Josh. No police, no real consequences until there was. Is there any world where he ever actually answers for that? Donna's asking that via Facebook. And if people are already confused because everybody's name starts with a J, Josh is the one from a couple years ago. He's the one who admitted to doing things with his sisters. His sisters have come out and said, yes, he did that to us. And then he got busted for material on his computer at his used car dealership, CSAM material that some local investigators here have said is some of the worst stuff they've ever seen, involving very young children. I mean, just disturbing as hell. And he cordoned off his hard drive so nobody could find it because he already had a tracker on it because people were already watching him. He's also had the Ashley Madison account. I mean, he's in prison now until like 2032. That's Josh. Joseph now charged with doing inappropriate things with what would have been at the time a 9-year-old, and has since admitted to that, allegedly, with local police on the line. He's now being extradited back to Florida. So is there a world in which we go back in time to which Jim Bob ever faces any sort of consequences for not reporting Josh to police? Now that we've kind of defined the roles here.
I don't know. It's going to come down to, as the great Bob Motta says, the prosecution. Do they have a prosecutor involved here, kind of like in the Adelson case, where we're just going to go down one domino at a time? I think there's I'm glad you started a whole podcast series on this, because I think there's going to be more. How could there not be more? You have two in one family, all brought about because of a sect of a religion. This what was it? NSB, IDLP, which is really extreme. The curious charge. I'm curious whether this comes up, and this is what Jim Bob may or may not get involved with others, is trafficking. Because again, I'm just looking at the limited data we see. Mm-hmm. So Josh gets accused by his sisters, or his sisters reported to the dad that they were abused by him when they were younger. Mm-hmm. The dad's solution, Jim Bob's solution, was not to inform law enforcement, but to handle it internally. This is what the church, this is their IDLP preaches. Mm-hmm. We handle it. We don't rustle up the brethren, or whatever the hell he calls it. And so their solution is send them to a work camp handled at IDLP headquarters.
Yeah.
I wonder what he's learning there. So again, it's just conjecture. So they kept everything as an organization in-house. You got a problem that's in-house. And so if you start moving people from one state to another state, that's a federal thing that'll take charge. And so I'm really curious, were they shuttling people back and forth? Because again, on the special, that was the Shiny Happy People, you have a few of the girls talking about how they were then abused at that headquarters once they're shuttled there by the head of the whole organization. What was his name again?
Not the Duggars, but there's accusations from other people who were victims that claim they were victims as part of IDLP. Yes.
Right. So to me, we have a lot of potential for other cases, at least for investigation. That's what we have potential for, a lot of investigation. That's a good way to put it.
And I think it's important to say, I'm not accusing Jim Bob of abusing his children or doing anything like that. What the crime here would be is being aware that there's abuse happening and not reporting it and not doing anything about it until he's eventually kind of forced to, because someone else's buddy who's in that doc said, by your own, teachings here, by your own belief system here that you're running for Congress on and being all prim and proper and Jesus-y on, your son will be going to jail. In some cases, if you look at it even deeper, he'd be getting the death penalty. Because that is also part of what he, campaigned on and believing is that, people who do this to children should face death. I happen to agree with Jim Bob on that. And I've said before, well, looks like you got some problems with your kids. You might be having a few less. You might have to change that number back to 17 or something. But the thing is, and that I think is a serious question, because even if he's not doing anything, and I'm not saying he had or did, he's never been charged with anything. So in no way am I saying that. I know you're not saying that either. But what we're saying is, okay, if you have knowledge of the crime, something this severe, and you are essentially, by not reporting it, enabling it because it's happening repeatedly as a pattern, that's a crime.
Yeah, complicit.
That is a crime. I don't care what your religion says about it. I don't care what you feel about it. I don't care what you think is better. I can't just create my own, like, it's essentially like they create their own country, if you will, with their own sets of laws and rules, and it's all controlled by Gothard and God, and then whoever else is in the umbrella that day. And I'm sorry, that's not how it works here in the U.S. You can't like kind of create your own judicial system
because
your
you're not aware of the
religion.
law doesn't mean you're not exempt from it.
There's no world where it's like, well, I'm supposed to go to court, but today I'm going to go to Lutheran court and the Lutherans are going to judge me because my religion says that their law is more important than the actual judicial law of the land. No, that's not how that works. In fact, actually, the Bible talks about the exact opposite. The Bible talks about give to Caesar what's Caesar's. It talks about obeying the law of your land. So he's actually violating that too. But it's so amazing how folks like this, they get so wrapped up into their bullshit cult religion, can kind of just pick and choose what they like, when they like, and then apply it to whatever bullshit they want to do.
Kind of going back to your earlier theme on this, it was really kind of shocking to see how it all started, and then how the shift from being kids as the number one thing in the focus. I mean, that's the whole premise of IDLP, is the quiver of arrows of children being the blessings from God, and all of a sudden the biggest blessing in his life became what he's making off of TLC, and that took precedent over everything. And to as anyone has children, that you have a great healthy relationship with your kids, can you ever imagine in any lifespan ever having the conversations and the vitriol he was having with his second oldest, Jill, the oldest daughter, about how he was withholding money from her, about how he claimed to the IRS he's paying her all these hundreds of thousands of dollars that she never got, and then guilting her into signing shit to sign it all away so he could keep using her as much as he wanted to, rationalizing his behavior of this is just a ministry. I mean, it was so, as a father of a daughter, watching him, listening to him, and again, it's all according to Jill and her memoir.
Yep.
Caveat it with that, about how he was treating his children with that kind of disrespect, and just focus of self. I mean, just watching him focus so hard on himself as the years went on was heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. And then to the eventual, chart, you have one kid in prison and the others might be on his way there now.
I think it's going to be extremely telling, and I hope to God the FBI is, because obviously we got interstate things going on here with Joseph. We know. I mean, they're looking at all the digital devices, at least from Joseph and Kendra. And here's the thing, that shit spiders out. So if we're going to start to see, I got anybody, if there's text messages on there or anything, some sort of communication between Joseph and Jim Bob or anybody, insert anybody here, and there's knowledge of this that went on, there's more people going down. I
would think so, because first of all, you learn how to do this somewhere. So here's a great, well, it's a horrendous stat, but here's a good stat to know to understand how these things work. For every one child that you've seen that was trafficked in some way or their images were traded, there's 400 others that are part of this network. And so if he learned this, being Joseph, he learned this somewhere. Maybe he learned it from Josh, but Josh learned it from somewhere. These two don't strike me as the type of individuals that would shut up and not share. These look like blabbers that will do anything they can to get off, to throw someone else under the bus. And who they going to throw under the bus? Other people that taught them how to do this, where to do this. And so where do you think that's going to go back to?
I'm interested, and I'm not saying it's Jim Bob by any means. I
don't think it's the father. I don't think it is either. It's organization. I think it's the organization.
And what I'm wondering is if even they are going to be surprised by what they find out, by where these boys got this, or where this comes from. I don't know. I mean, I could. There is a window here where they could turn this around. The ones who did not do this but were so bamboozled and so drinking the Kool-Aid of their religion, two of the girls have already done, I think, two or three of the girls have already done this. They've already gotten out and they've already seen reality for reality's terms. The rest could do it. They could, if they really want to do something good, Jim Bob and Michelle and everybody, stand up and go, we were bamboozled too. We thought this was the way to raise children. We thought this was great. Turns out this is an abomination of the Bible. This is an abomination of Christianity and religion. And we fell for it. And unfortunately, a lot of people have too, and we're sorry we did. This is horrible, but let's expose it now. Let's bring the people to justice, because look how much it's damaged our family. Let's prevent this from happening to anybody else, because I think there is a world where Michelle and Jim Bob are genuinely shocked by these things, and they can't figure out why it's happening, why there's this pattern going on with their kids, but they're so tempered down into the IBLP and their way of thinking, and they've dug themselves so far deep in that it's so unseeable, unfathomable to even get out. But I don't know if they're even capable of getting out mentally. But there's a window to do it. And I'd highly suggest doing it. Otherwise, I think the wrath of the evidence of reality is going to come down, and it's going to come down hard on a lot of people. I don't know who or where, but I would venture to say it's going to be more folks in this ecosystem that have been part of this way of thinking and this way of covering things up and handling everything privately.
Anytime you have an organization that is set up for secrecy, for not sharing information, and limiting and controlling contact between people, controlling what people does, and it's centered at the top with one individual. I mean, it's a pyramid scheme. I mean, and where else did we see this happening to before, which kind of shocks you, is Kevin Franke, Ruby Franke's husband. Yeah, he was sold into all this crap that she was spewing too. It's when these things become your identity, like Jim Bob and Michelle, when you are so entrenched and this is your entire identity is your IDLP faith and your religion, it can do no wrong because these doctrine that they set up and work from are non-correcting institutions. They don't learn from past mistakes. They double down and say, well, it's the individual that made a mistake. The institution organization is fine. So that's what's happening here. They're saying Josh was bad, Joseph's bad, but the institution did no wrong. It's them. So they don't change the institution. They double down on it, and that's why there's going to be more.
Yeah, it's like it's not the hamburger's fault for being overcooked. No, it's whoever cooked it. That's
because it's common to have 2 out of 19 turn like this.
Yeah, exactly. Totally common.
Oh my God,
your odds are that high. Yeah, it's
it's not just we're not talking something like didn't go to college or decided to become a plumber or follow in the father's footsteps. All the things that can become systemic inside families that follow in footsteps. But this is a rough one. This I've never seen. Again, I've researched it. I don't think there's ever been another case where you had 2 children sex abusers as siblings in the same family.
Yeah, I don't
look that up.
I don't know. I mean, it's somewhere. I'm sure they're probably, but to this level here, that were marketed to the world as wholesome. And can I ask one more question? This is the most important. Why the hell does Joseph look like an adult version of the Gerber baby? With the hair. I mean, it's like, what's going on here? Why? Anyway,
it's the innocent look of the religion. Yeah, we're just children of God.
I think that's kind of, your thoughts in the comment section on Substack and YouTube. We'd love to hear them, and give us your opinion. Press subscribe wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss any of our podcasts as we put them out. Be sure to check out Robin's book, It's Not All About Me. It's available wherever you get books right now. Go and check that out. All right. Until next time, for Robin and Todd, I'm Tony. We will talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.